G'day legends, I hope so far that you're having a fantastic weekend, and for everyone out there, happy St. Patrick's Day. I hope you're having a great day and a pint of Guinness wherever you are. Now today we do have a little bit to go over, but I will say over the past couple of days the war has been fairly slow. Now why is this? Well, it is because one, there's a lot of information out there that is just contradictory to each other, so it's very difficult to actually report on what's happening. I guess if you're unbiased, or at least try to be unbiased as myself, I appreciate that everyone has some biases, but if you just lean into one narrative or lean into the other, your job becomes far simpler and you can just report on whatever one side is saying. But when there's so much contradictory information out there, it's difficult. So it has been a bit slower for me, but as well, we've got the elections happening inside of Russia. So of course, Russia won't want to do anything and greatly embarrass himself in big failed assaults or whatever with this. So likely once, well, we know who's going to win the election. Once that has then happened, we'll see the long-awaited further offensives after now the fall of Avdiivka, then the refit phase. We'll see more of that. The ISW has been reporting on that too. So we're in a little bit of a lull of the battle at the moment, but we're going to talk about a few interesting bits and pieces today. Of course, Ukraine's sort of new strategy and exploiting vulnerabilities that Russia has, of course, and we'll look at the maps. We're going to look at casualties, the changing war, more defensive works, and then, of course, the strike that occurred in Odesa and some new information that's come out about this. Now, where I think we have to start is these new strikes that have been conducted deep inside Russia by Ukrainian drones. And of course, this is one of the big things of the Russian economy. The Russian economy and how they're fueling the war is off natural resources. This is why Russia is a wealthy country. This because of that. It's the same for Australia. If you wanted to attack Australia's economy, you'd hit our oil, gas, coal, things like that. And that's how Russia is continuing to finance the war. Now, what I will say is if the sanctions were working against the economy like people wanted them to and like they were meant to, these targets wouldn't have to be being targeted with something like an explosive one-way drone. So obviously Russia can continue to finance this war, and these aren't about to fall over under sanctions like some have said. Otherwise, this wouldn't have to be taking place. But Ukraine is having more success with this, and we're going to talk about a new drone of why they may be having this. Some of these are hit out to 900 kilometers away. Now, Zelensky in his address today said that these weeks have demonstrated to many that the Russian war machine has vulnerabilities that we can reach with our weapons. Now, in my eyes, he doesn't strictly say this, but he's meaning that the vulnerabilities in the war machine is to try and affect the economy, trying to hit primarily in these strikes oil refineries, oil depots, and attack the economy from the inside, I guess, as well as what we're seeing with the crossings of the legions into Russian territory. Well, I'm not even going to speak on this at the moment because there's just so much information that is contradictory to each other. It just, to actually have an idea and report truthfully on what is happening there, it would be bloody impossible currently. But saying as well, Ukraine will now always have a strike force in the sky for their long-range capability for their drones. So this is what I believe that he's referring to, as we've seen 6 different refineries hit over the last week. Now, this is only 4 of them here, but we see ones out like here. This is hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from Ukraine. So they are getting deeper and deeper strikes. We have some footage here. This is the Samara region. This one is said to be about 900 kilometers away. Now, how much damage do these actually take? Well, unlike every Twitter user and YouTuber, we're not all experts in oil refineries or naval warfare or air warfare. So look, I would say I don't know, but from my reading in this is oil refineries are one of the hardest things to damage but easiest to repair that I've actually read, because they're so large and also set up purposely for to mitigate any fire or explosion risk if it does happen. But as well, these will take a long time to fix and will have an effect on the economy and the finance for Russia's war currently. So how much effect will this have down the line? Well, sort of unsure, but it may be a ripple effect that we don't see it straight away, but we will see it as the war continues and as this war goes into another year, another 2 years, however long it's going to then continue on. And speaking of how long the war's going to take, no one really knows. We hear dates thrown around of Crimea in 23, Crimea in 24. We hear all this, but at the end of the day, the frontline movement, strikes behind the line are one thing, but the frontline movement tells us that if there's going to be an achievement of either Russia's or Ukrainians' goals in the long term, it's going to take a hell of a long time. Now, how are these drones getting through? Well, one, it's incompetence of air defense is the only way something can get that far in and not be targeted. As well, we do know some of these are being hit, but these drones are going in swarms, what is very difficult for air defense. But we do have what is said to be a new Ukrainian drone. Now, this is, of course, based off the Iranian Shahed drone, and they're saying that these are working as a decoy for the other explosive drones going in. So Russia think that it's a Shahed or something similar, don't hit it, and that these are basically a decoy. They're made to be shot down, no explosive on them for that. That's it. That's just off my limited reading on these. And have a look at some photos here. At black, we're seeing the Shaheds now come in black, engine at the front, cheap little thing to make. And then this here in Persian says deadly danger as a bit of an in your face to the Shahed system. So I believe we'll, of course, continue to see these strikes. How effective will they be? Well, we won't know for an amount of time. That said, the war will continue to rage. Now, like we spoke about right in the beginning of the war and what is happening at the front line, because of the elections, because of the recent advances in Avdiivka, we were expecting a few weeks for Russia to refit, get ready to restart an offensive in a direction. And we are seeing that over the past 2 days after basically no movement. Now, this is, of course, Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv up here, the red areas since 22 and the purple since 2014. So we'll come down into Avdiivka. And the only change we see on the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense map here is then these red areas here by Russian advancement in Avdiivka. So this is now almost a complete Avdiivka, up to 90%, and in Berdiachi here as well. So we do see then a Russian advance in this area. Interestingly, this isn't then shown on Suryak, and this is a Russian advancement here. Now, there are some interesting bits that we need to speak about here. We were getting information that, 10 Su-34s were shot down in this direction, dropping fabs in a week. Now, what we have seen is those fabs are continuing to fall. There's many, many videos of that, but we haven't had any reports since then of any of these then being shot down, which is interesting. But what we do see is the Air Force spokesman has been fired. Yuri Ignat, who we've spoken about a lot, has then actually been fired from his position. So I'd like to thank Colonel Yuri Ignat. I'd like to thank him for his productive work in the position. He'll remain Air Force and work in another direction, no less successfully. So we are seeing, again, more and more of these senior command positions being changed around in the Ukrainian Defense Force. Now, you can speculate on exactly what that is, but yeah, we're seeing the spokesman then go and no more of those planes being shot down. You can put maybe 2 and 2 together for where I'm going with this. Now, this is from the ISW. We don't speak too much about the ISW anymore, but it's worth having a look at that. Russian forces likely captured Thankyou west of Avdiivka and Nevelsky southwest of Avdiivka. So we then see down in here, we'll see Nevelsky down here. Now, this map is not showing it, but ISW is saying that it is likely then under control of then the Russian forces. That's what Deep State has been saying for a little bit, and that there has been further push out in Thankyou here too. So what these maps are actually showing, well, it's hard to actually line these two up, but we do know that there are more advancement. It seems like that advancement has restarted out. What this is, though, is this is where the first line of defensive sits. This is where the second defensive line sits. So it will be interesting to see what exactly happens once or if Russia can break through this first line of defenses and how prepared those and then subsequent lines following that actually then are. Now, where we will come down into is Robotyne. We have seen no real change in here, even though we're getting so many reports of Ukraine getting ground, Russia getting ground. We haven't seen anything but a small grey zone shift just in here And that is it, meaning that Ukraine has lost some ground by the Ukrainian MOD map here. And then we do have this map by Suryak here now, so showing more of a Russian advancement. Now, if you remember yesterday, this paddock up the top here, that's what they said had fallen. And then the day before was sort of this chunk of ground just in around here. Now, there's another chunk just out from the west of Verbove. Situation is up front. Russian army continued advancing northwest of Verbove and the Surovikin line. Of course, what we do know was this is Russia's massive defensive works built up in the south. Of course, the most dangerous part if they were to lose for their war in Ukraine. Built, of course, these massive defensive works, and they're trying to get back this part between Verbove and Robotyne, of course, that held for a number of weeks in the Ukrainian offensive, and they're trying to recapture that. Many other maps will say they have recaptured this part in here. Try and reconnect that, because it is very likely if Ukraine goes on the offensive next year, say that this is where, again, they will push to try and then break this supply line between the east and the west of where Russia hold to, of course, then get down somewhere into Crimea. And now on the map, as far as changes in Belgorod, Kursk Oblast, there's been no map shown changes here, at least. So maybe just wait out on any more, reporting there. We just don't know yet. Now, more has come out about then the Odesa strike yesterday. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking down in Odesa here. Of course, where we're seeing those one-way attack drone boats going out to hit the Black Sea Fleet, and also where we saw that Iskander strike against some sort of Navy base in there, where Zelensky was just in the minutes prior last week. Now, we did see reports that 2 strikes hit in here yesterday. Now, the official report was that it hit civilian targets by double tapping that. Now, some more reports coming out that there was some military targets there as well. With these strikes, I know everyone's commenting blah, 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 on either side. We don't know. We just do not know what is hit. There's official narratives, there's reported narratives from both sides exactly what was here. We just don't know. It's illegal to take photos of these strikes, the aftermath of these strikes. So geolocation is almost impossible, except if it's from something leaked. And what was actually there, again, is very, very difficult. But then this was from the Kyiv Independent, that the missile strike in Odesa rises to 21 killed and 73 injured. Now, according to a local council member, Odesa's former deputy mayor, this Serhiy Tetkunin, and this Alexander have been killed. Now, this Alexander, the commander of the Police Special Forces Battalion, Tsunami, was amongst those kills. Now, some people are saying that this was a meeting for these units like Tsunami or maybe Tornado down in here, who, of course, have become, when they say like Special Forces Police, it's really to fight. It's paramilitary to fight the Russian forces. It's not like your typical cop putting a bloody sticker on your car, for instance. It's very different of how that works. So that's the only really new confirmed information, because both sides are confirming that he was there. But as far as exactly what happened here, we just don't know. Now, we need to have a look at some defensive works build up, as well, as we are seeing more and more reports of just more and more Ukraine defensive works being built up. So down in the Kherson Oblast, what of course sits down in here, this is Kherson. Of course, Russia had a footprint in here where the green was at through 22 up to the end of 22. So we're seeing then these dragon's teeth are getting put in by the tens of thousands in here. Remember when these went in, everyone took the piss out of them, and then we're seeing those people have to sort of chew on their own words, because now Ukraine's putting them in. And then up in the Sumy Oblast, where of course we did see this cross into Kursk here by the Ukrainian-backed forces. We then see more images coming out today of major built-up defensive works in these regions too. So, if you didn't think there was a real threat of further advancement in Sumy, in Kherson, you wouldn't be building these up. And many, many people are saying that these are too little, too late. That said, time will tell. With everything in this war, time will tell. Now, I did have a friend of mine talk to me about something very, very interesting, and I just want to share this with you. He was saying that in this war, one side inevitably has to become desperate. And what happens when someone becomes desperate? It's looking like this war is not going to have a diplomatic end. To say negotiation well, it's probably the second most offensive N-word you could actually say online. It'll almost get you cancelled like the other one. And it is looking like, and people are speaking like, it will be fought to either the last Russian or the last Ukrainian. And there is no doubt that this war in its current state is a war of attrition. So inevitably, one side will start losing badly, and it will be like bankruptcy, that it all happens slowly and then all at once, and someone will go desperate. Now, the powers that be in this war are powerful nations with powerful intelligence services. What will happen when that desperation grows? Now, he speculated to me that if Russia grows desperate, we need to remember that Russia has a massive nuclear arsenal, and they continue throwing, that's probably the third bloody N-word around, they continue throwing that around as well. They're not scared of throwing that around. And if Ukraine goes desperate, well, what are the chances of, say, a false flag attack to try and involve NATO or to sabotage something like a nuclear station? We know there's multiple nuclear stations in Ukraine, but more likely something to try and involve NATO to invoke Article 5 and get them involved. And to back up, both sides of this, the Kremlin's always speaking about nuclear escalation, and we've seen examples before of Ukraine with these attempts, I guess, at some sort of more NATO escalation. We saw the missile that fell in Poland that was 100% Ukraine's. Everyone agrees it was Ukraine's, but still to this day saying that it was Russia's. And then we see the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline as well. So it will just be, I think it's a concerning idea to go, when this war is near the end of wrapping up and someone has to grow desperate, how does that then look? Now, I'm not saying then that means you have to be scared of the end of the war and then, well, we shouldn't fight because of these, but it needs to be in the major overall calculations of exactly how this goes. But of course, I will add that Russia at any point can pull back, and of course then the sanctions and whatever will lift over time if they did pull back. But is that going to happen? Well, at this point in time, it's just not looking like that at all, nor is there going to be any negotiation over territorial changes inside of Ukraine's borders. So at this point, if we're fighting to the last Ukrainian or the last Russian, it's going to grow desperate somewhere. And for him, he was saying, and he's very knowledgeable, saying that concerns him of what do we see at that point in an act of, well, it's all going to shit anyway. Now, of course, we spoke about there was the Russian election going on, and of course there's more polling issues, which is no surprise. There's ink being poured in ballot boxes, and there was a reported explosion in the Ukrainian-occupied town of Skadovsk at a polling station that has left 5 Russian occupiers in hospital. And we're not sure exactly what actually happened there, but the Ukrainian Resistance Center has called this the result of a successful sabotage by the resistance movement. Now, we just want to look over what the the UK MOD Intel update has said. According to analysis by Avdiivka of the Russian Pension and Social Insurance Fund, there's been a record growth between 22-23 of the amount of Russian men aged 31 to 59 with disabilities over 8 years of available data. In 22, there was a official 1.7 million, and then the figure increased by 500,000, 30% in 2023. Russian demographers have told this that the increase in the number of men with disabilities is most likely due to a growth in military invalids, if people get injured at war, and as well probably people actually having some sort of claims on injuries so they don't get recruited into fight as well. You do see that when there's conscription, people go, yeah, look, I'm going to talk up my knees. There is almost certainly a case a significant majority of the 355,000 casualties that the Russian armed forces have suffered as a result of the armed conflict in Ukraine have been wounded personnel. Now, this number is a lot lower when we're saying that it's both killed and wounded than some other official numbers out there saying that that's just killed. The average daily number of Russian casualties grew from the start of the Russian offensive campaign, in reaching a peak of 983 per day. Of course, with these numbers, I always say no one will ever know what these numbers are. And when you go through the studies that actually go through funeral records, Facebook records, paper records, the numbers are significantly lower. We'd expect that to be lower, and we know that it'd be higher than that, but still. Record rise in men with disabilities aged 31 to 59 and wounded personnel have a significant impact on the Russian medical and social services. This is going to be the exact same story. This is a fluff piece. Of course we're going to see this. And guess where else we're going to see this? We're going to see this exactly in Ukraine too. Ukraine's fighting a war. Many have been injured. Many have been killed. And it's going to have an effect on the medical and social services in both Russia and Ukraine. We know they have huge demographic issues with replacement rate, with people leaving the countries, and now that there's a war, with people being killed and injured. It's going to have a huge lasting ripple effect, like hitting then financial things like the oil will have as well. Now, this bloke as well, this Sergei Flesh. Now, the way I saw him described on a Ukrainian paper was a military expert in radio technology. Here he's speaking about these drones with like the tow wire, like a tow missile. So that we spoke about this as well. But he has then put this on his Telegram that I've been sent off a couple of my friends. Mark my words, in 6 months to a year, both sides will begin to produce enough FPVs to destroy every soldier with them. Both day and night on the surface in a zone of up to 5 to 8 kilometers, all fighters will be detected and destroyed. All infantry will go underground, and all activity in the near zone will fall on controlled ground robots. Now, I think saying that controlled ground robots by 6 months to a year, one, that's pretty Terminator, and that is a very, very short amount of time to make this claim. Be very, very interesting. He's obviously more knowledgeable than myself on this, but we're talking a Terminator-style war in 6 months to a year. If we go back 6 months to a year and look at the development in these already, it hasn't been that great. Like, the use case has improved as far as people are using them better, but how far has the technology come? It's improved, but it's not this leaps and bounds like we saw from the very beginning of the war. So, of course, things will start to slow down as they develop further. So, but he's saying that the all infantry will go underground and it'll be controlled by ground robots. Well, in that case as well, then it's going to even be a more stagnant front line. In my opinion, the defense for these sort of drones just hasn't met yet the offensive capability. So once that actually then catches up, it will just be more stagnant as well. And then we'll be back to troops on the ground because you can't jam troops on the ground. But these FPVs are an incredibly scary thing that we're going to see more and more of. Now, legends, slower video today, not as much. There's just not as much, I guess, to talk about today, which is hopefully a good thing. So let's hope that not as many people are bloody dying in a horrific frontline war. But I'll speak to you tomorrow and have a great week. Bye-bye.